Well, hello again. Welcome to another episode on our gearbox conversion. As you can see down there, it's all done and bolted up, and we are done with it. So keep watching, you'll see how we overcome the starter motor issue, and that's all sorted now. Engine turns over nicely. I've done a couple of welded some of the bolts in onto the plate, the conversion plate, to make lining up the gearbox a little bit better, and it's a lot easier to get it in place. And you'll see it's all up and ready and running, in and out of gear, clutch actuates nicely. We are complete at last. So keep watching, you see how we sort out the starter motor, and also at the end I'll run through all the things we've done and what we learned and the parts that we've used along the way. Right, I have an ST170 starter motor. Now this was being sold on eBay for 40 quid, so it would be rude not to, judging by the fact it looks almost new. It doesn't look like it's had hardly any use at all, to be fair. So yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's an ST170 engine, so we know that that cog there is going to suit that flywheel for definite. So they do look the same as the old Pinto starter motor, so I don't think that's particularly an issue. So as you can see, I've already got my fly lead bolted up to it. I've had that on there just to check that it does actually spin over and it's fine, it's working, and we're happy. So what we'll do now is offer it up to what we do have and see how close or not it is. And if it means I've got to weld these up and drill out new holes, then so be it. It's not the end of the world. Let's see where we're at. Now we're going to want the teeth to mesh nicely with the flywheel. So what I think I'll do is, if you eyeball down through the starter motor, see how the teeth meshing lines up pretty much with that flat there. So what we're going to want is that flat to almost be touching the flywheel, I guess. Almost. In fact, it could even possibly be touching over it very, very slightly. So let's see if any of our holes will line up at that. And the answer to that question is almost certainly no, they're not. Which is typical. Okay, I do have a plan that involves clamps, so I've been thinking about this. So if we clamp it into position where we think it's going to be, I think the first thing I'm going to do is take the flex out of this plate, because there's a bit of flex in this plate still. Once it's all bolted up, it takes the flex out of it. So I'll clamp that to the block first, down there somewhere. So that makes sure that we're not getting a false. So there's no flex now on that. And then let's see where we're at. So I reckon we've got to be about there somewhere. So let's get a clamp on that one. And if I eyeball it across there, I can see that that's need to come in. How to do this without getting in the way of the camera. Right, let's see what that brings us. Nope, that's not happening. So I think we're a bit too close. Wedge it out just a touch. And try again. That sounds promising. Okay, so that's a good start. So we got the flywheel, pinion wheel is jumping out onto the flywheel, spinning and then jumping back again. So we're pointing in the right direction already, so that's a good start. So what I think I'll do now is leave that clamped in place. Take that off. Leave that clamped in place, pull the flywheel off, pull the plate off, and see if we can mark that to stay where it is. Hopefully you see what I mean now. There's a story behind why I lost one of these. I wasn't filming it at the time, it's a shame because it would have been funny. So I cut these down because these are ST170 bolts, thinking, right, I'll save myself 30-40 quid here. I'll cut these down, clean them up, and reuse them. Which is probably a bad idea anyway, probably not a good idea to reuse these, but as I was cleaning one off with a wire wheel and a attachment, it got caught up in the wire wheel, went round and flung on the garage somewhere. I have no idea where it went. So that's kind of forced me to buy a set of these. So it's probably a good thing because I probably should be using these anyway. Yeah, I was trying to be a cheapskate and save a couple of quid. Right, hopefully we can get this off without... Ah, yeah, excellent, that's good. Go one side. Ah, yeah. Super. Alright, this is all good news. Right, I think I'll take that fly lead off there for a minute because it's going to get right in our way. My next plan is just to run a 10mm drill bit through there. Now these are threaded and I don't need them to be threaded because I'm going to bolt them from behind and screw them in. So if I screw them in from behind, it'll be encapsulated in here, and if I ever need to change a starter motor, we'll have to pull a gearbox off to do that, and I don't really want to do that. So we get a 10mm drill down through there and just touch the end, and then we'll have a centre. Or shall I drill it all the way through? What to do? It's going to be a bit difficult from this angle because the starter motor is actually going to get in the way a bit. Yes, I think what I'll do, be a better plan, making this up as I go along, see, is clamp that on there, so I know that one's solid, and then undo one of these other clamps, like that one, without fear of it moving around, and see where we are to drill through that one. Yeah, it's going to be easier for me to get a drill onto this one, so I'll drill through. That one's not threaded as it happens, so that'll work very nicely to get a 10mm drill through there and bolt that one down, then work our ways around to the other ones. Okay, I'm sort of spitballing this as I'm going. Yeah, I think that's as far as I'm going to go with that one because I'm moving things around here. Let's bolt that one back up so I can at least get a spot started on it. That one's on half of the other hole, so I'm going to struggle to drill that one through, and drill is on angle on the side of this. Okay, clamp that one back down. Same problem here, I think. Yes, even worse. Okie dokie. See if I can get a pen in there. Nope. Okay, well, at least one hole is going to be in the right place. That one, which I think I'll drill that one through now. Maybe a bit of wood to back it up with. I need to sharpen up my drill bit. Right, got a pen mark here somewhere. There it is. I think my drill is going to catch on that hole there. give it a go nonetheless. Okay, that's what I thought would happen. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is weld these holes up. Got the welder turned up. I'm going to back this with a bit of aluminium, which is my guide off my pipe benders. I do have a proper copper block here somewhere. It's about 1.25 inches square, but for the life of me I can't find it. So this is plan B. It's not ideal, but clamp that onto there and we can weld up holes, hopefully. That'll take some heat away as we go in. Right, okay, that's that welded up. Now, I thought that was going to warp that all over the place, but as it happens, it's all nice and flat still, which is excellent news. Right, let's finish off drilling out our holes and see about bolting the starter motor up. Right, let's bolt all that back up to the block and see what damage we've done. Now I've drilled these out to accept so that they can bolt through it now as well. Right, let's get a flywheel on and see if we're pointing in the right direction. Yeah, that's good news. And that's not flexing about anywhere. So we should be in the right department. So we just need to get a hole now through for that one there. That's definitely dulled my drill now. I've drilled straight into the concrete. Right, I'm just going to chamfer these a bit and then I can get a bit of weld into them. Cut these down enough. They'll sit in there with a little bit of a bevel and leave me enough space to weld them. Don't want to go quite to that level with them because we're going to be encroaching on the edges. You don't want to be doing that. Yeah, so I think if I put these in the lathe and just take the edges off these, so they'll fit in those holes, but leave a little bit of a bevel on them to keep them in place, that'll do us a treat. That'll give us something that we can weld into place. What I'll do now, that leaves a nice little gap there for me to fill that with weld to keep those studs there permanently. So then it'll be a case of bolting from the other side. So you can see there's a little well in there now. So I'll weld those up, grind them off, and I think I'll do the same thing on this side with the bolts where they come through for the gearbox itself. So there we go, that's the bolts welded in to the back of the plate. So I'll get a grinder on them and clean those off. And there's the bolts for the starter motor welded on as well. So that is effectively our conversion plate complete. So I'll just grind those off now, clean those up and show you what we've got left. So we've got it cleaned up and the starter motor back on. The bolts are in place. So the next thing to show you is this is a Mazda MX5 1.8 clutch plate, and that fits a treat. And the pressure plate and the flywheel. So that's a good combination, better than the Mazda 626 one, as it happens. So get that back in place. Again, I'm just doing this temporary, so I'm using not got all the correct nuts and bolts and what have you in it. Still mocking things up, but just proving what can and can't be done now at this stage. So this is a Mondeo 1.8 flywheel and pressure plate, and MX5 1.8 clutch plate. Right, let's get the gearbox on and see if the starter motor still works with it all clamped up and in place. The other thing I wanted to show before I put it back together is this is the release bearing, the Mazda MX5 box release bearing. Fits very nicely over there, so that's not an issue. Get some swap off it. Nice idea. Right, it's back in the box and get the box back on there. There we go. Needs a bit of encouragement. Right, so we still have clutch action. Yes, lovely. Super! Right, thanks again for watching that. So, what have we learned along the way? Well, I hope you've learned something. I've certainly learned a number of things. So the materials we need for building this box, this adapter and putting this together. So we need about 400 by 400 mil of 1.2 plate to make the template. 400 by 400 6 mil plate to make the actual adapter plate itself. Need some 10 mil countersunk bolts, so they best to be sort of the 10.9 tensile strength ones. The difference in price between them and the 8.8s is marginal, so you might as well go for the 10.9s. Some 12 mil countersink, but machine screws rather, not bolts, machine screws. Some 10 mil and 12 mil nuts to suit. We start a motor from the original engine that you're working with. I know I've learned that, as you've seen, the difficult way. So if I started with the SD170 starter motor from point 1, I could save myself a bit of grief there. The clutch and flywheel, so we need a flywheel from a 1.8 Mondeo, and that's to suit 220 mil clutch. Now that's really important because there's two different types. There's one for 240 and one for 220, so you need the 220 mil clutch flywheel. 1.8 pressure plate for the Mondeo, again for the 220 mil, and a 1.8 early clutch plate from either an NA or NB MX5, because that's 215 mil, and we've seen that fits in very nicely and nestles into the gearbox because it's a proper clutch plate for the gearbox. And the MX5 release bearing that belonged to this box nestles into that all nicely as well, so that's no problem. Prop shaft, I haven't touched on that at all, but obviously you're going to need a hybrid prop shaft as well. There's a company near where I live called BAR Props, and they build prop shafts for a living and restore prop shafts, and they're quite reasonable. They built one for me for my Ford Pop that I did, and it was brilliant. It worked a treat, and it was, for what they charged me to build it, I'd struggle to make it myself for the same price. Oh, excuse me. So there, I can recommend them. The gear stick relocate, well, that is very useful. So this makes this gearbox possible for a number of applications, and so not just Mark 1 Escort. I reckon you could probably use this in any rear wheel drive car, a classic car, because we can relocate the gear stick up to, well, I've only moved it forward 4 inches, but I reckon we got another 1.5 inches, possibly another 2 inches there, that it could be moved further forward again. So at 4 inches from the front of the gearbox to the centre of the gear stick is about 28 inches. So that means we're possibly sort of 27, 26.5 inches there. So that really makes this gearbox suitable. And with a bit of ingenuity, I reckon you could go the other way if you wanted to stretch it out, if you for whatever reason. So that's definitely very easy to do that. What else have we learned? I've measured up this arrangement now, so it should fit in the Escort shell quite nicely. The steering shaft arrangement, which I was worried might interfere with that, is actually a fair bit lower. So all that should be out of the way. Hoping it's sort of going to creep in between there and the clutch release mechanism, but the actual how I'm going to release the clutch, either hydraulic or cable, cross that bridge on the car. I intend to go hydraulic, but we'll see how we go with that. And the other thing we learned along the way, which was helpful, is that this has got decent bearings in it. It hasn't got those funny cone-shaped bearings which makes the input shaft waggle around. This has got a nice quality bearing, so centralising the gearbox, although important, doesn't have to be super critical. You know, there's tolerance there. And the pilot bearing is okay on it. What I've done on my pilot bearings, I sort of just crept into it a little bit. I've actually pulled the pilot bearing out of the crank just a few, about 3 millimeters, so it sits right on the edge of the crank rather than pushed right in, and it fits in there nicely. So only way we'll know that for definite is when the car is actually on the road and using it. So we'll see what happens with that. In the worst case scenario, I think what would be possible is to push the pilot bearing back into the crank and make a short pilot bearing extension, which would then mean having to lop off the front of the input shaft just a little bit to make a space for that to all fit. But I think it's going to be fine, to be honest, especially for the amount of miles I'm going to be doing in the car. So I don't think it's going to be an issue. So that's what we've learned. It's been an interesting process. It's a bit more to making a gearbox adapter plate than I first envisioned, if I'm honest. It's quite a lot of hassle getting it all lined up and that. And in reality, it would be easier to use an RX8 box. So if you're looking for a gearbox to use, RX8 box is easier to adapt because the input splines suit a Ford clutch anyway, and the adapter plates are available off a chap on eBay who doesn't live a million miles away from here either. I don't know what his name is, but if you just put an adapter plate, it'll come up. He's one of the first ones to come up on your search, and he sells adapter plates for about 100 quid. So and they're very nicely made, because one of his I used again on the pop, and I put the RX8 box on the pop, and it fitted very, very nicely, much nicer than what I've done here, quite frankly. So yeah, excellent. Yeah, thanks for watching. I think that's covered everything that we've learned along the way there. I don't think I've missed anything out. So if you enjoyed that, please subscribe to the channel, and please share the channel and like and comment. Let me know what you think, and we can keep on growing the channel. It's growing very, very nicely, and it's well beyond my expectations. So thank you again from me.